out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Rin Tim Tim, hello.
Roof.
I'll assume that's high back in Rin Tim Tim dog language. I'll continue my regular old English to say a regular old hello to all you listening. Hello and welcome to Dismembering Horror, episode 162 of Dismembering Horror. Indeed, the podcast show, or as I like to say, shoo, where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
myself, Tim Aslin.
That's right, we dismember a horror film at the clip of every week for you. And to dismember a horror film, we talk about what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything else we found interesting or noteworthy about a, you guessed it, horror film. I feel like it's been a while since I've clarified or made known or said what I like to say up front, but just for whatever reason I've been forgetting to. I put emphasis on those what worked for us, what did not work for us, because this is all very much in the spirit of just friends getting together and talking about those things. Even though Tim and I have are filmmakers and think critically and can get passionate about what we like or don't like, we by no means, even though it may sound like it when we get passionate, are saying we are all that is right. You are not allowed to enjoy Insidious. You are a bad person if you like The Conjuring 3. No, we don't mean that at all. Actually, quite the opposite. In the spirit of friends getting together, we hope that merely the level of dissection that we're speaking to allows you to then just simply think on those specific points, how you feel. And if you hate us or are loving us in those moments, cheering us on or yelling at us in disagreement, it's all great. Because as I said, this podcast in the spirit of just friends getting together and talking about what we all love talking about and are here for. Stories of the macabre, stories of mayhem.
I would love to see. I would love to see like a reaction video of somebody listening to us and just being like, no, you're wrong, you idiots.
Oh, my friend Nick has gotten so mad at us. Like he loved The Strangers Pray at Night.
Oh God.
And was like yelling at us through that one. I think he's like always like, he says he disagrees with you a lot on different things. I'll call him. Yeah, he says my enemy Tim.
Nick, you're wrong. I'm the authority. What I say is the gospel.
Every once in a while I hear from him and be like, yeah, I listened to your show again. Just kidding. How did you guys hate this movie? And Tim, what he said, God, you guys just are so wrong. Well, it's not about being wrong or right, but that is how we feel because I guess we're the ones with the microphone. So, it can get annoying.
That's right. Start your own podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, all the same, thanks for being here.
Right. Oh, yeah. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time.
And also, what I like to say up front that I think I have been good about saying up front recently is, and I always make a point too, this is all in the spirit of discovery. That's what gets me Jones in life and with movies is what did this film unveil? What did it do that was interesting or different? How did it work or not work in a way that is unique unto itself? How did it explore this theme in a way we hadn't seen before? How did it not explore this theme in a way we would have liked to see? All that. And just, in that same sense of discovery, just trying to see all that's good and all that horror movies have to offer. You got to dig through the whole pile in order to get to anything. So that's exactly what we're doing here too. Great. I feel like it was a good thorough, just check up. What are we all doing here? All right. And for this week, anything else, Tim, before we move on to this week's episode?
No.
Or I should say
it's
this
spooky
week's
season, though. I'll tell you what.
Right. This week's subject. Right. This episode right now we're doing releases September 30th. So if you're listening to this live or a few days after, welcome to the spooky season.
Yep.
For this episode 162, we covered, well, if we're just talking about trying to see all that is out there within a subgenre of horror that I feel is very tackleable is the horror anthology subset or subgenre. Seems like there's not tons and tons. Like whenever you look at a list, like if you see a list that stretches as much as like dares to go as much as like top 25 or top 30, you're kind of like, that is kind of all of them. It seems like,
right.
It's really not a top at that point. It's ordered, but I don't know if you could say it's a top. But it was fun to check up with one from another country. It's always interesting to do too, provide some kind of a different context. So today from 2012, we're going to be talking about horror stories from South Korea with a wraparound and 4 shorts all throughout it. Another horror anthology film. So Tim, to jump into horror stories, we like to start with a trailer. Are you ready for that?
Oh my God. I'm so ready.
Great. Me too. All right. Here we go again from 2012, South Korea, horror stories.
살고 싶어? 그럼 얘기해봐. 무서운 이야기. 극도의 공포가 피색깔까지 바꾸지.
체포한 박 씨를 서울로 긴급 포송하기 위해 임시 비행편을 마련한 상태입니다. 우리 좀 살려주세요.
쥐새끼한테 물린 거 아니야?
그 인간들한테 또 뺏길 수 없어.
Wow, vintage 2012, Tim. Like,
yeah.
Nearly 10 years ago.
Oh, man. What's
Great.
up with that trailer? It was like super, super widescreen format on YouTube. That's interesting. I've never seen that before. Who cares? Why am I even telling you about this?
Right, they couldn't see it. Okay. Well, Tim, we like to curtail viewing the trailer or partial trailer into our rating system, which consists of, would we tell ourselves to avoid this film, stream it, rent it, or buy it? And again, this is just Tim talking to Tim and Ryan talking to Ryan.
But technically, it's Tim talking to Ryan and Ryan talking to Tim and Ryan talking to all of you. But you're correct. It's Tim talking to Tim.
Our rating is if Tim was talking to Tim. Tim is talking to Ryan and the listeners about what Tim would tell Tim.
That's right. Okay. I'm a little mixed on this because, like, I had a good time watching this, but, like, critically speaking, there's a bunch of stuff that I was like, no, I don't like it. But I liked watching it. It's weird. So I'm going to give it a high stream.
Great.
Almost was a low rent, but a high stream. High stream for me.
Well, Tim, just to keep things interesting, I was going between a low stream and whatever, avoid it.
Wow.
Okay. I've given this kind of, we have our subsets within our rating system here, but I've given the stream it's before where I'm like, yeah, you know what? If this is like the last movie of the night when you're with friends and it's a horror anthology and it's Korean and it's like you need one that's okay to be falling asleep during, like where it's fine if it's at that level. And it's just kind of like fun if you're falling asleep or like stoned or whatever to kind of like try to just follow and keep track of with your friends. Great.
Oh, let me tell you what, if you were stoned and you were trying to follow this, good night. you're
Right.
You're not going to have a good time. Just
Well,
go to sleep.
But you are having fun because it's with friends. You're just trying to hang in there and whatever. But
Got it. Yes.
Tim, I mean, just to bring in the state of the world a bit too, that reality of getting to watch the movies that way is just something I'm so disconnected to now.
Yeah.
Of just like not getting together with friends on a regular basis like that anymore. Like, boy, do I miss it. But just so I gotta just, I don't know, I'm just coming so much more from the context of these days. Like, well, okay, so it could be stream it in that context for me, like a lower stream it. But again, since that's so just a reality I'm so separate from now, and I'm just only thinking in terms of just me sitting here alone, what would I tell myself to do regarding a movie? I just got lost with this movie after the first short. It just totally went downhill for me. If I'm being honest, which, hey, again, just my opinion, how I felt. Sorry, Horror Stories. Seemed like fine people, but I was only wanting it to be over. I was so disconnected. It's just, anyway, so I would tell myself to just avoid it and watch something else I've seen before again that I really love, even, one of those cases.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think the reason I'm kind of in this higher camp, I guess, or whatever, is just I don't know. I like anthologies. I actually just think they're fun, and I'm kind of in that mode right now anyway because I'm going to the film festival and seeing blocks of short films.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, because of that, I'm like, oh, this is kind of just like another block of short films. And like, my expectations are pretty low. And I'm just there to kind of casually consume and take it for what it is. And so I just kind of like was okay with it not being that great.
Yeah.
Which is weird. But I like anthologies. I think they're fun.
I mean, I do too. Don't know if I have a favorite. Anyway, not important, but I think this film, it had its best one up front, and that so just really killed my enjoyment of it in the long run. Like,
okay.
You can see how that would just kind of kill it when it doesn't. The first one would be so. Anyways, but cool. I mean, you'll plenty I can say, maybe not plenty, but enough I can say that did work for me, blah, blah, blah. So we can keep moving on. We'll get to it all. But
cool.
Avoid it, Ryan. All right. Well, Tim, since maybe you were a bit more engaged than I was, you might be the perfect person to try to give us a brief summary here, a brief rundown.
Brief. Okay, here we go. Anthology style, we've got a wraparound story. It's a girl who's been kidnapped by presumably some sort of deranged serial killer, and she's tied up, and he says, tell me a scary story so I can fall asleep, because I can only fall asleep if my blood is curdled. And she says, okay, I'll do it. And she dives in. So we get 3 stories from her. Right?
4.
Wait, 1? What was the 4th? 1, 2. Oh, right. 4 stories from her.
Wait. Which, when you're telling us right now, let us know which one you were just forgetting.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I don't know. The first one feels, I don't know. We'll get into it later. The first one is so convoluted to me that it's like I don't even know what I watched. And the third one, I was so confused that I was like, I just want to forget that happened. So here's what they were. The first one is called Don't Answer the Door. It's 2 kids. They're being taken home from school, and they're going to be home. They're basically, in a way, latchkey kids. Their parents aren't home. And they've been already like pre-freaked out because they were watching a scary video at school. They get home, and their mom has told them that a package is going to be delivered, and to not open the door for the person delivering the package, which is smart, safety first, and wait for them to leave. And then you can go get the package, bring it inside, make sure the door is locked, and call mom. But we quickly devolve into a series of who knows what is real, if it's in their head, if it's a dream, if it's connected to something else. But it's a lot of home invasion style horror, and ultimately the kids fall victim to this home invader thing. I don't know what else to say about it.
That has something to do with their dad's corrupt company he's protesting.
Oh, let's not get too down the rabbit hole here, Ryan. Okay, okay, great. That's the first one. Oh wait, well, you're right. Okay, so this is my problem. I don't want to. God damn it!
Just keep it going. You painted the picture. Yeah.
Concise. Yes, you're right. There is some other stuff going on as to why the home invasion is happening. We'll get to it later. Okay, number 2. By the way, this does not make our wraparound killer fall asleep, so she has to tell another one. Number 2, Endless Flight. I liked Endless Flight. Just side note. Endless Flight, another serial killer has been captured. He's been caught, but his thing was, kidnapping people. And the last person he kidnapped was a flight attendant and killed. But now that he's caught, he's being put on a plane to presumably be taken to trial or put in prison or something like that. So the whole plane is empty except for the flight crew and a couple cops that are escorting him. And we follow a flight attendant who is a little freaked out by the notion of having this serial killer who has escaped before on her flight. And guess what? He escapes his shackles and wreaks havoc on the plane. He kills basically everybody on the plane, and she has to sort of fend for herself and fight him off. And that's it. That's the story.
Yep. Yet this guy also sees ghosts.
Yes. He sees the specter of the victims of his, I guess, or at least one particular victim. I feel like it's the last victim. But anyway. But, he ultimately kind of gets away, flies away, because that one just ends with her being like, and they were never seen again.
Yeah.
Great. Number 3. Our serial killer is still not asleep. Number 3, but he's dozing. He's starting to fade. Number 3, Secret Recipe. No, did I say the last one was called Endless Flight? Number 3, Secret Recipe. This was a fucking mess. Sorry. But it was. But the gist is that you've got 2 sisters, one of whom is trying to kind of become the other. She's jealous of her sister. And the sister she's jealous of is courting a very rich young, well, not young, but man who looks very young because he's super successful and whatever. Who knows why? Probably he's a vampire or something. And in courting him, he's coming over for dinner, and then the sister who's jealous is kind of mucking it up and being obnoxious. What we find out is that he and his mom are systematically capturing brides, killing them, and then pickling their meat and eating it, and maybe that's why he remains young looking forever. This all happens. The woman that he's courting, the sister, I guess the good sister, she through various pitfalls avoids being the one who gets captured. The jealous sister ends up getting captured and pickled, and then fed to her own mother.
And our young guy is a plastic surgeon. I forget if you mentioned that. Just sort of that's
he's a
flavors it all.
surgeon. Yes, I forgot about that part. But yes. And that's it. Like, she doesn't die, but maybe it was all a dream. Who knows? Now our serial killer kidnapper is he's almost asleep, and our heroine who's telling these stories almost gets away, but not quite. So she has to tell one more story. This is called Ambulance of Death. Oh, no. Ambulance on the Death Zone. Excuse me. This one was okay. Some of it was okay. It's zombie apocalypse kind of style stuff. You've got a mother and daughter who have been put on an ambulance, and you've got the ambulance crew assessing whether or not they can get to the hospital in time and safely, and whether or not the daughter has been bitten and is infected, and if they should kick her off the ambulance or try to save her. And this devolves into a just sort of, what's the right thing to do? The doctor thinks one thing, the nurse thinks another, the mom thinks another, the driver is sort of like, what should I do? And it all falls apart zombie apocalypse style, where they all kind of get eaten and, die.
Yeah, the nurse kind of becomes our hero in the middle of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that one was close to being solid, but we'll talk about it later. So then we come back to the wraparound. Our bad guy has fallen asleep. Our heroine woman is getting her, she gets the knife, she gets her binding unbound. She gets up, she's about to leave, and oops, he woke up and he slits her throat at the end.
Yeah. He says, now I'm going to tell you some horror stories or something like that, and then kills her. Now it's my turn to tell you horror stories. Something like that.
Mm-hmm. It's a mess. Sorry. It just is. But it's weird because I was just sort of like, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It seems all like innocent enough in a way, and just like,
yeah,
I get what you mean.
Anyway, there you go.
All right. Great summaries, Tim.
Thanks, bro.
Now we can really start digging in deep here, though, with our first section, if you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
Okay, great. Here we go. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm.
What worked? What worked for you?
I guess since I'm on the enjoyed it less spectrum, I feel like I should just talk through my positive experience as a starting point for what worked here.
Okay.
Just like what was my experience watching it? How is it positive? Start out the movie. You're just kind of right quick in this setup. It's like a young guy captures, has already captured this young girl. The music's totally hokey. I'm like, okay, where is this going? Sorry, it's not meaning to skip away to what does not work, but just to give my whole experience here.
Yeah.
But then pretty soon off, I thought it was really interesting because, he's just like, okay, he's going to torture her and make her to tell stories, whatever. This just feels so familiar. But it just felt like a little nice, okay, made me sit up in my seat when he goes, here's the knife, you can have it, which maybe doesn't really make sense how it played out, but it at least sort of got me like, all right, he's got another kind of plan here. All right, what's he up to? Made me sit up. All right, tell her stories. She's got to tell her stories, like you said. First one, it starts out really cool. We have a clear in. She says, pretty sure she straight up says, like, this is something that happened when I was younger. So it feels like she's pulling from her real life here. Here's an in that we have. But that's actually true or not, we'll get to if it is her. But I'm pretty sure that's what she says. At least that's how I was viewing it on my first viewing here. Cool. Feel that personal touch. So that when I'm watching this first story, it's neat. It's sort of, you can look at it from the perspective of like she's having this memory. She's describing exactly how she saw it. This first story here, it was really fun. Like it got me from that get-go where you have an opening shot of like a creepy space, but then a jump scare happens and it turns out it's just one of those like YouTube jump scare videos and kids are watching it.
Right.
It's great. Then we get into like totally just like quirky, fun, weird, like musical number almost, which, I'm a sucker for. I was, laughing. I saw Tim there going, even though I wasn't with you, I can imagine you just going, what the hell? Where we have like the school teacher singing to the bus of kids as they're dropping them off.
Oh man, I was dancing along with them.
But it had character and like weird little moments in it where like her voice changed in a creepy way, and this kind of like undercurrent of a fun, like a weird, just kind of innocent, creepy, fun stories being told in this horror anthology. The hokey music is almost kind of working in a sense, and then from that point on, then we have like, yeah, maybe it's not totally making sense here and there, but I get it. We got just sort of, this is the story of like the fear of a parent telling their children to be wary of adults, kids left alone. Cool. That is the thing for this story. Then we just had some really fun moments in it, Tim. Like the highlight of the whole movie for me, I think, was when, after the delivery man comes and drops off the package, he goes to the door again. And we have this guy shove his head in the door, and it's like just the visual of it where it's like he has really tight, fine, thin wire like drawn tightly across his face. So it's just kind of like a weird, fun like visual for a pursuer or a bad guy or whatever. But it's just like that kind of energy that it brought when the girl screams and runs away, and the guy, the way he like, it just has these sort of funny smiles. Yeah. Like it's his performance. He's just eating it up and is just having fun with the creepy way he looks. And this is the way he looks from side to side and makes his curious sounds. It's like, cool, this is fun. I'm digging this. Even then, like the jump scare of just the creepy girl ghost in the hallway, whatever that was, or in the closet when the kids are hiding in there. It's creepy with just the unmoving figure, standing behind the plant. And then it all closed. And then in the end, it all kind of came full circle where they ended up in the space from the creepy YouTube jump scare video. Like, yes. How cool, like as a way just to sort of, tie it all together. And I was a little confused on these other details, but great, solid. There's my what worked for me for the first opening scene of the wraparound and first story.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the things for me that worked with same stuff for the opening. I think the visuals of the opening are actually really solid. I was like, oh, okay, like we're in good hands. Then we get into the actual story, first story. And like, I agree. I thought it was kind of fun and goofy and in a good way. And they do make this reference to sort of what you were saying, the political stuff, which is the daughter is seeing a newscast of a worker who had been laid off from a particular job and ended up committing suicide by setting himself on fire in sort of, protest and despair over having been laid off. So there's this like side kind of story going on that we wind up finding out is the reason that these people are breaking into the house in the first place, because they're seeking revenge on the parents of these kids. Yes, that's right. How do I not just tell you why it's a mess? Okay, so regardless of that, there are a couple really good moments for sure. I mean, I really like that whole lead up of the kids running and hiding in the closet and the intruder, opening closet doors, and each time they open one, it's not the right one. And then finally you get to the right one and we take a hard left turn into a totally different scare, which, although confusing, was still kind of fun and, exciting because it was a scare. You get this really cool big eyeball looking through the crack in the closet.
And it does play into how the story wrapped up, that idea of this is a story of kids projecting their fears of something that's not there into just whatever the random fears are, whether it's creepy wire-faced man or ghost in closet.
And my sense was that there's a woman specter that shows up a handful of times throughout this story. And at the end of the story, I kind of was like, okay, I think I've put it together that ghost woman who's there as well as the intruders is the specter of the woman who killed herself. She's a burnt up specter. I like that idea. Regardless of how it played, I think that's fun. And I do agree, like, when they get out of the apartment itself and they run downstairs and they're like trapped and they go through a door, the tension of all of those moments is good. Like, I was feeling it. And I love that they get into that same space that we opened with. Of course, numerous times we kind of are snapped back into a seeming reality. It's like a dream within a dream a couple times, and that gets a little convoluted. We'll talk about it later. So hard to know exactly what was real in this one. Sometimes that works really well.
Again, that was the point of this one, which I thought was cool. In the end, even though maybe it just kind of wrapped up like to sort of take care of that in a voiceover, at least that idea was there and consistent. It justifies why we have these different sort of manifestations and why we're jumping back and forth to realities. Kids, it feels a little maybe cheap and condescending in a way, as a philosophy of kids just see whatever and imagine their fears or whatever, or people to see whatever. It at least was consistent idea that justified everything going on.
Yeah. But that's, I don't have anything else. You know what? There's one shot, this reminded me so much of a Berenstain Bears book that I had, which was like, I don't remember what it was called, but something about like, don't be like afraid of the dark kind of installment of the Berenstain Bears, where like Brother Bear and Sister Bear, for some reason are like primed to be like kind of freaked out. Maybe they were like being told a spooky story or something like that before bed, and they get in bed and in the dark, everything in the room looks like, through their imagination, looks like something scary. Like, but when they turn on the light, they realize that like it's just the coat hook, with the coat on it. It wasn't like a man standing in the room.
Yeah,
and
I remember
there's like
that
3
one,
or 4 of those, right? And I used to love that because it was sort of this thing of like, our imaginations can do a lot, and you can be scared, and being scared is kind of exciting, but also like, if you turn on the lights, you're probably okay. Like, I really enjoyed that.
We have that exact moment in this one where it's like, oh, here's actually what was behind the plant or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And I was psyched about that in the moment, like him standing behind the plant and then finding out maybe that was all just her imagination running wild. That concept, or like seeing that kind of idea played out, was fun. And maybe just because of the nostalgia of the Berenstain Bears. But anyway, beyond that, I don't have much else.
Great. Well, I guess I can sort of say what worked for the other sections, and then I have a couple of just kind of like overall things, maybe. But if we're just going to keep going down the list of shorts here.
Yeah.
Next was Endless Flight. For this one, what worked?
What? Right. Was that the next one? Oh my God, it was. Damn.
So then,
okay.
Endless Flight, what worked for me about this one was I liked our hero, our flight attendant, So Jung. That's how you pronounce her name. She was just a fun lead.
Agreed. Yeah, she played it out. I like the like trapped on a thing, you know, like you have nowhere to go really. You got to fight the bad guy. All of that was fun.
I can say
Crawling under the seats and stuff.
I like all that on paper.
Yes.
I cannot officially put it in what worked for me, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're so right. There's so many things that sort of, I guess, ostensibly, I was like, oh, cool, but then execution wasn't quite there. Damn. I enjoyed this one the most as it was going on, but now looking back, I'm like, is that just because of my expectation or like my excitement for the possibilities of the situation were high? Because like when you think about what ended up happening, I'm like, what ended up happening? Nothing. I don't remember. No, I remember. It just was, yeah, it was milky, if you will.
Well, that's not a very good what worked, Tim. I'm looking I said my thing that worked for this one, and I'm done. So if you, I'm looking to you now if there's anything else about Endless Flight.
The setup worked for me.
Okay, great. Well, then if that's it, then we can go to Secret Recipe, where I can say the same. The setup worked for me in Secret Recipe. Even just some of the ideas, cannibalism ideas I'm always down for. Idea of a creepy plastic surgeon working with his mother. The sister, who's, I guess, the bad guy sister, just had this like kind of manic fun energy to her and kind of is set up from the get-go of being a little crazy. I want to look exactly like my sister. Give me plastic surgery to do that. We have then this like the strange like love triangle kind of set up where they're all playing footsie under the table, and the mom feels like she's just kind of there orchestrating it all, or is, conniving with the one sister and going to the other one. This one kind of has its own kind of quirky flavor and setup to it with the setting of the house and the rich people setting, I guess, and all that. There's a wedding going on. So just at the beginning of it, I was just kind of like, with all that going on, I was kind of sitting up a bit and being like, ooh, where is this one going to go? This is interesting. And that's what worked for me about Secret Recipe.
Yeah, I mean, this is based on a folktale, and it had that feeling. It's sort of I guess it's a Cinderella-esque folktale. And all of that sort of underlying stuff I really liked. I was like, these are cool concepts, and these are like this cautionary tale kind of vibe, and this flipping the Cinderella type stuff on its head. I was like, oh, these are fun. I really like the idea of the many brides, right? Like that's just what he and his crazy mom do. They entice brides or entice women to become his bride, and then he's keeping all of their dresses, the wedding gowns, like in a room hanging. That to me was the coolest part of the whole story.
Yeah, and as part of the setup, that was fun, like making clear up front, she's wife number 6. They say that straight up at the beginning.
Yeah. So that stuff was all cool, and I think the tension, like you're saying, the tension between the sisters and the mom. It now, of course, occurs to me. I don't know how I guess I sort of implicitly understood this, that it's really the main character is the not like the mom and her sister are her stepmom and stepsister, right? So they are mother and daughter, but she is the whatever sister from somebody else through marriage. And so it really is Cinderella, but it's this very dark version of it where Prince Charming is a bad guy. And once the stepsister, the sort of the jealous stepsister is captured and tied up, I like that visual of like the wrapping around her in his surgical room, and the the death like the device of dropping this weird, like, I don't know what you even call it. It's sort of a bladed masher thing that falls from the ceiling when he like hits a button, and it like minces her, I guess. I like that. That was kind of cool. That's all I can say without just going into things that didn't work.
A bladed masher thing. Exactly what it was. Great. Last one we had ambulance on the death zone. This one, let's see. I just thought it was fun how we kind of gather that they are using the term rats to refer to as the infected / zombies or whatever. Just like, I don't know. That was an interesting little touch you hadn't seen before in a zombie thing.
That moment I really was excited about when he has said the rats and you've been bitten by the rat and blah, blah, blah a bunch of times. And I just was like, oh, this is a cool idea. Whatever the zombie plague that has infected people is coming from rats, much like the plagues of old, even though, just side note, it wasn't really the rats, it was the fleas. But, so I thought that was cool when you get this moment of, oh no, here they come. And the first shot, you can't make out what is kind of like coming over the hill toward them. And I was like, ooh, maybe it's going to be a horde of rats. That'd be pretty cool to see. And then I was like, oh, maybe they just are calling humans rats in this instance. And then it turns out to be that. And I was like, that's also cool. So yeah, I like that. That was fun.
Just trying to say, oh, these vermin. Yeah, just trying to look at these infected as the vermin. And then, just kind of like the wire man in the first story, peeking his head through. And then I didn't even mention once the wire man makes it through in the first story, and he's kind of like cavorting around and just playing it up in a way that's so silly and fun and just creepy, crazy, man. There's a moment like that I enjoyed performance-wise in this one, where the ambulance driver, when they exit the tunnel and there's all the zombies there, and he has to deal with running them over and avoiding them. He has this moment where it's one of those scream laughs, where it's sort of devolving between the two, screaming and laughing, where it just turns out, he just becomes hysterical leading up to, I think he crashes and whatever. But just his performance in there of doing those scream laughs, I thought was fun, and more just kind of that fun energy of an actor, just kind of, so like I just said, just having fun with it. I appreciated when that popped up in this movie. Just not, it's a weird, I want to say not taking it seriously, but at the same time, it's the taking of it seriously that then makes it fun,
Right.
So,
this one of all of them to me had the most kind of irreverent, like over the top, like style. And I liked that. I liked that it was really like in your face and everybody's kind of insane in a way. And like, the shots of them toward the end, like flying out of the back of the ambulance and all of the sort of set piece stuff was, unrealistic, but in that sort of fun, over the top, bordering on cartoonish way that you just kind of accepted. I was just like, oh yeah, this is just nuts. Cool. And apropos to a crazy, zombie apocalypse scene. Like I enjoyed all of that.
Great.
The performances, I think, in that one are fun. Everybody's just losing it, which you would be, I think, if you were actually dealing with zombies. I think everybody would just be screaming at each other.
Yep. They are certainly doing that. Great.
Yeah.
Well, some, I guess, this last overall things to touch on. When kind of like much like when we do the Japanese horror, we've done a handful of Korean horror movies now too, and looking at our episodes. But there's something you're looking for in those, which I don't know how to describe it other than there's just like a Korean intensity, or where they'll just maybe like really go to effed up places or whatever. Just that way, I'll appreciate where it feels like only how they know how to do. So there was a moment like that in the first story I appreciated, where just when it was happening, I was just kind of like, oh God, I can't believe they're going here. But it's when they have the little kid begging for his life with the guy who's holding up the lighter, threatening to drop it on the gasoline. Like,
Yeah, that was. I was like, oh, okay. I guess we're doing this now. That's we've we've made a departure from just sort of like fun, scary intruder film to no, we're gonna light a kid on fire.
Yeah,
and he's
exactly.
gonna beg for his life. That was an intense turn.
And that's exactly what I can depend on these South Koreans for, it feels like. So thanks, guys. And then so then sort of again on that level of intensity or whatever, or just messed upness. In the third story, the cannibal one, when it got into the cannibal husband licking the blood off the prospective wife or the future wife or whatever, and just him like hamming it up of talking about, oh, when you're scared, it does something to your meat, or when you're shaking out of fear.
Right, right.
Just that kind of monologuing and just full up, going for that, all that cannibalism stuff and him drinking her blood. I was like, yep, great. All right, perfect. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, they lean into the twisted sort of thing in a good way. Like I appreciate that.
Yeah, they go there.
Yeah.
And then last overall thing, I don't know, just sort of like in those two moments that I highlighted as being my favorite moments, there you could tell it felt like the actors and maybe the filmmakers were having some fun during it, which in something that doesn't seem to take itself too seriously is just a nice energy to have behind it all. So you could tell it wasn't just totally like a by the book, just guys get out there and make this movie, but that, they were having fun with the blood effects while they were doing it, which you always hope actors can do when they're doing a horror movie.
Agreed.
Especially one like this that's just kind of ridiculous.
Yep.
Cool.
I can't say I have anything else. I guess the wraparound, I kind of was like, I enjoyed those two actors in the wraparound. There's a moment when, what's that?
It's a unique like duo or rapport or
Right.
situation to be in.
There's a fun moment which actually kind of freaked me out, where the kidnapper, the guy, is just sitting there kind of staring at her, and he suddenly like tips his head back and opens his mouth, and his eyes kind of roll back in the back of his head, and I was like, whoa, this is really like unsettling looking. And he's just doing it to be a weirdo, like there's no like reason for it. And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about it or unique about it is it's like two young people, and I don't know, it's a to have a crazed serial killer that feels like he's essentially her age. It's just kind of I don't know. It didn't go to like, oh, it's just a creepy man, or it didn't get too specific of, I mean, he was a creepy man, but not like a man, or it didn't have to go too far into some sort of setup or the flavor of bad guy he is. I don't know. It was just kind of simple, and they went for it,
right.
And they're just trying to have fun in the performances with figuring out the quirkiness of their characters.
Yeah, it didn't devolve into this kind of, I think we've seen this a couple times, where it becomes like a case study of like, why is he the way he is? It's like, we don't care. Like, it's an anthology thing. Like, let's just take it for what it is and be done.
Great.
Yep.
Well, I feel like we got a lot more on the next section, so you ready for it?
Probably.
All right, here we go. Again, for us, what did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Look, there are like 3 things that are consistent throughout all of these that were bad. Number 1, the music is really bad in all of them. It's that weird, it feels like canned music. It's like, I don't know, royalty free, like the most tropey of tropey sort of stingers.
The
throughout.
best example for what you're talking about, I mean, it's just consistent, but just to highlight it, was in the secret recipe one, when you have the one daughter spying in the room on the other one through the hole. And I think for the second time in this whole movie, you know, she stabs a poker through it, just barely missing her eye. And when it comes through, there's just that stinger noise. It's just like the most hokey, classic sounding cartoon. I mean, I can't imitate it, but just
yeah, exactly.
Strings escalation.
It really was distracting.
It's weird though. I almost have to put it in both what didn't work and what worked, because like in the first story, it felt like, I know, you know, you kind of missed the boat on this age-wise, but it had that quality of like watching an old Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark TV show, where it had that kind of like kid quality where it's just being so obvious and upfront and telling that when it is all kind of hokey, but is okay with that, it can kind of work. So I mean, I can just say, you know, I'll agree with you. Yeah, but at the same time, it's bad. But then where the music, to take it further, like where it really didn't work for me, and this we'll get into maybe my overarching problems with it, is it didn't I know you were kind of on a string of the few things that worked so bad for you too, but here's mine now, I guess. But it's just the overall like flow of this whole movie just fell off, like on each story, how it flowed from story to story, scenes, and then even moments within the scenes. There's just so much that just like, I don't know how to put it other than it just wasn't clicking or wasn't flowing. And just to sort of, yeah, and we'll break that all down further. But I think the music contributed to that, where if you have a scene that kind of is like flowing from moment to moment awkwardly, and we're like, well, what's kind of like, well, like you look at it, like, you know, you always hear filmmakers or critics talk about how it sounds so pretentious, I guess, but you know how a film should be a musical piece or an orchestra, or there are even, you know, filmmakers who talk about like it's a movement or there are movements within this piece. So you think in that metaphor, the soundtrack, if there's going to be music throughout, should especially be a part of that. But in this, it was just only hurting it. It felt like the music was just as confused. The composer was just as confused as what the hell we were supposed to be feeling at any given point. So where maybe the soundtrack could have been used to sort of like help smooth that all out and just sort of be like, okay, here's this beat here that we're going for. Here's this beat here we're going for. It only muddled it all that much more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really disjointed, which leads me to my second big issue. Nothing about any part of this movie has a concise beginning, middle, and end. It's really all over the place. I mean, it just like the first story is confusing because you're constantly not knowing like if you're in a dream or not.
Not just the first story, Tim. They use that device where they're either dreaming or imagining something in every single one.
That's my third big overarching thing.
Okay.
So these can go up together, I guess. Like that device, that's like waking up from a dream thing is it's so old, overused, tropey, and cheap. It's super cheap. I'm so tired of it. Like,
here's the thing. It has to be tied into the story or style in a way that feels intrinsic to it. Like for me, it's just it should just be another available tool. Like it's as common as a cross-cutting or whatever. You know, it's not something that's a trope that I feel like has to be like gone forever. I just think it has to be used knowingly and in context and be a part of a fabric of it all. So like in the very first story, where if it's a story about kids imagining things or not, like that makes sense for that first one. But then for the other ones, it's just this lame, arbitrary, just like excuse to have these jump scares. Like, God, it was horrible in that last one. The third one, the cannibal one, Secret Recipe. Like at the big unveiling at the end where the daughter's letting the mother know, oh, the pickled meat you're eating right now is your daughter. It's like, so she's telling her that horrific thing and the mother's acting accordingly. That should be enough to make a scene out of. But for whatever reason, they have to insert this totally pointless jump scare of the daughter, like in jump scare form, just appearing with blood down her face for just a jump scare moment where it just cuts to her looking like that randomly. It's not based on anything. It doesn't mean anything. It's just to do that. It's so lame.
Yeah, it was really frustrating to me. Like using that device, I guess that's sort of why it goes in conjunction with the lack of like good, clear structure in any of this. Is that it seems almost just arbitrary. It's like they don't know how to construct the story concisely enough, so they're just throwing things in there. Like, oh, we've gotten to a point in the telling of this sequence that we don't really have a logical next step. Let's just have her wake up and it all be a dream. But they like muddy that too a bunch of times. So I'm like in the first one, we're with the sun and the moon, daughter and son, right? Like brother, sister, brother, sun being and moon being their names. But like once we've gone into this other storyline of the workers, the brother of the worker who got laid off, who killed herself, like protesting and being kind of like shut down by the mother of Sun and Moon, who is the boss of this company that laid his sister off. And then he goes crazy and he ends up being the person who's invading the house. But we go back and it's another setup of the same thing of like leaving the package, and a young boy answers the door this time. And then that young boy is the person who gets gasoline poured on him, but he's not Sun or Moon from the previous thing. So like, who is he? And is he the kid of one of the other high ups in that company? I mean, it's just like super confusing and convoluted. And like, why? What did that, like, without explaining it, what purpose did that serve? And also, why are we now in a totally different but same story? It's like the same. I felt the same sort of convolutedness with the third one, the Secret Recipe one, where I'm just like, we've done too much of this jumping around to who the main character is and who we care about and like what's real and what's not real. I'm like, I don't know anymore if I'm in a dream or if this is real or like what just happened. We just hard cut out to a new scene. And I'm like, did somebody just wake up? Are we like supposed to be able to follow this? Like
that
I don't
can be
know.
One that I love and was a buy it for me audition. Like that's part of that story is what's real or what's not.
Correct.
But one,
we know where we are and we get enough to hang on to go, oh shit, I see what's going on here.
Right. But like, so in Secret Recipe, here I can use one of those just lame nightmare moments as just sort of like how it's part of a larger little sequence that just something just felt off and not flowing right about it, where it's like we have the moment where it's something like, oh, well, you won't be able to get married or you won't be able to attend or something like that. And she goes, why? And she goes, because you have no feet. And she looks down and her feet are bloody stumps. I guess that's a fun moment, but then it cuts immediately away. It's just a nightmare. And we go like, okay, well, what was the point of that at all? Is this about like, I don't know. But then, okay, just to kind of then get to the whole sequence and just try to, I don't know. I could almost like kind of use some help on why the flow of this felt so off. But like we have that.
I don't think I can help you.
Well, we have that fake jump scare moment. She wakes up and then immediately after that, she realizes she's locked inside this room.
Correct.
And then immediately after that, she gets gassed and passes out. and then and then we cut to the other characters. Then when we get back to her, she wakes up in a completely different location with the other mom, the mom of the killer.
Correct.
And it's just kind of like, wait, so, and then the mom of the killer is kind of like, oh yeah, I found you passed out. And you're just kind of like, wait, what? Like, she found her in this room that she was locked in and alone. She stumbled across her. What did that mean? Even just sort of like the sequencing of the scares, like it felt like there was no knowing connectivity of escalation between nightmare, fake out, she's locked inside, she gets gassed. Like, it was just this kind of like stuff is happening at you sense of when it's happening. And that's like my sense through this whole film was just, and maybe it's a big part of it is like you said, it's not anchoring itself on clear beginning, middle, ends. So maybe it all kinds of stems from that. I don't know. You could try to figure it out or break it down different ways. But it's interesting how it kind of manifests on all these micro, macro, and everything in between levels.
Well, it's really interesting because I think a lot of the time, the challenge when you are using these devices of like subverting what reality is for your lead character, is it a dream? Is it not a dream? What's real? What's not kind of stuff. Those can and have worked in storytelling. Like doing that is not inherently like a bad thing. But if, like you're saying, if you are not anchoring a reality somehow, you get what we got, which is this like jump around thing to the point of complete confusion. Like, I could go back and probably parse out like the actual truth of the intended reality for Secret Recipe, but I don't want to because it was so all over the place and confusing. Yes, we have a dream sequence that uses the trope of a dream inside a dream. And then we immediately cut to another scene where she is in a situation that's really crazy for, if we are grounded in some reality, it's like her being locked up is crazy. So we immediately are just logically going to think, okay, we're still in a dream. We're in a dream within a dream within a dream. We're tripling down on that thing. But then they move on in what maybe is the reality. And then she is suddenly in a completely new location. I mean, it's too many things stacked on top of each other of maybe this is real, maybe it's not. But then asking the audience to buy in once we're out of all of those things that we've come back to reality. Like, that's too much to ask. And it's just exhausting.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why by the end, I was just like, ugh. No, by the middle, I was like, I'm over it. Like, I don't know, another way to describe it, it just feels first drafty, I guess, in a way, where it's like, first draft approach, you're always kind of just, okay, trying to throw up the kitchen sink in a way.
Yeah.
But so, like, for example, okay, like whether it's the nightmare thing or like in the case of the plane one, the having creepy ghost girl woman appear. Okay, again, makes sense for the first story if it's about kids' imaginations running wild. It can be whatever. But for the plain one, Endless Flight, what did that do at all? What did it offer at all? Did it do anything interesting with sort of allowing us to subjectively experience what the killer was going through? No, it was just like for totally arbitrary jump scares that just only kind of muddled who we were with because only he was seeing them. And it didn't pay off in any way. Yeah. It didn't come back in the story of like she saved the day because she was taking advantage of that. It was just, it felt like literally they were like, oh, it would be creepy if a ghost girl appeared here, so let's do it. God, I hate it. I hate it. Sorry.
If you're
I
going to
hate it.
use that, I agree, right? Like, if you're going to insert that trope, it better be used for something, right? Like, the logic says that we've seen this before. If you're going to use it, logically have it extend to the point of the movie, like the end of the movie or the story. Have that specter be the thing that costs this serial killer his goal, right? Whether that means he gets into the cockpit and he takes over and he's flying the plane and he's diverting it to a place where he can land, and that specter scares him so much that he crashes into the side of a mountain. Something. Or that the flight attendant realizes that he's having these sort of like dissociative moments, and she takes advantage of that because she's smart enough to put two and two together, and she starts acting like that specter to distract him, to gain the upper hand and win out. Like
that would have been awesome. That would have actually made sense. Yeah.
Right? But they don't. And that's so annoying. That one, to me, like, as much as I like the setup, having the cheapness of them being like, and then nobody heard from them. Like, what?
No, yeah. I mean, I'm glad you could at least have a little bit of fun with that one, but I just did not care at all. I was so not into that one. Like, it just, well, like, another thing that felt lame about that plane one for me, again, maybe this is just, okay, I guess I put it like it feels like first drafty, but I think another way to put it that's maybe more accurate is it's just like filmmaking is so much about being plugged into wherever you think the audience is going to be at, both in the experiencing your movie, you know, direct way, but as well as just like an overall way, like how our audiences, you know, how do we view movies, like just in general. So like, and when you just miss out on these, like maybe these are bigger things we're pointing out, but some things that seem less obvious, I think take away from it for me just as much, when it just feels like you aren't being thorough or plugged into that way audiences are viewing your film. But like, an example, the gun on the plane. Like, we know it's, you know, we have that old rule, like, okay, if you show a gun at the beginning of the movie, it's going to go off at some point. We have another movie rule that isn't maybe spoken, but if you have a gun on a plane, it means you have to bring up a risk of how it's going to shoot a hole in the plane.
Correct.
Like, that's what it means in film language nowadays. Gun on plane equals risk of hole in plane. That
100%.
does not for this movie, doesn't even care or notice. It's just a lame gun that appears that offers absolutely nothing. It's just an easy weapon that gets shot off twice, has no repercussions. No one even stops to think if they should shoot a gun inside of a plane. It just felt so out of touch in that way.
I mean, also, so in the ambulance one, the doctor pulls a gun out of nowhere.
Right.
And I'm just like,
movie.
oh, wait,
like,
what?
I feel like that could be a first draft thing where I feel like you, on purpose, you're kind of like, okay, I don't know what the threat is going to be here. I don't know how person's going to get killed here. A gun's the easy just thing that movies do. So I'm just going to write it for now because I don't know what it is yet. I'll figure it out later. Nope, this movie just keeps the guns in, keeps the nightmare scares in. Another thing I had for that endless flight one, just kind of, you know, same point I was trying to make. Like looking at the context of this movie as a whole. All right, for the wraparound, it's kind of weird and interesting. Again, like you have this dynamic of just kind of like normal killer, like a normal guy who's just a young guy who's just a little like weird and off and is a killer for whatever reason. Doesn't like look strange, anything like that. You have that essentially that exact same character is the killer in this one. Like this movie, it just made it so feel like this wasn't a horror story, this plane one. It just felt like there's a fight on a plane between a dude and a woman. It's like, okay, like what's like, yeah, that's scary in real life, of course, you know, or whatever, but there was nothing horror-esque about it. I don't know. It's just so lame, especially when we've just already had a serial killer guy who feels like the same character. There's no novelty. There's no uniqueness for it. Like what? I don't know, man.
Here's what's critically lacking from this type of setup anthology-wise. If you're going to have the wraparound be the captive telling stories, those stories better have something to do with her plight. And there's a bunch of ways you could do this, but here's one example. Do essentially what Usual Suspects did, which is somebody has to tell a story to save themselves. In real time, they have to come up with this off the top of their head. Well, in this scenario, what are they going to draw from in order to come up with these stories to keep themselves from being killed? Their situation and their environment. So tie those things in to the stories that they're telling and have us have this catharsis when they get through it and it works, of the realization of all of these things, all of these stories that they've just told were pulled from the situation that they're in and the environment they're in. Whether that be, she came up with the idea of the pickled victims because in the room that she's in is a jar of pickled something.
Right.
Right?
Or how about this, if we're just doing alternative pitches, like what if for the wraparound, if he didn't get put to sleep, he kills the woman then and there, and there's like another one in the next room kind of thing. Then you would have some kind of threat, but then also you could actually make it so each person telling the story, it's like, all right, here's the scariest, just weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. Because how this one plays out was just so frustrating, like just how the transitions worked, where it felt like you're going to start off where maybe it would have been something like I just said, because this first story starts off where she says, here's something that happened when I was young. I'll never forget, blah, 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 blah. So then after that, and she stays alive or whatever it is, you're just kind of thinking, okay, so if it's going to be this one girl telling all these stories, has she just led a very storied, horrific life? Okay, it's a bit of a stretch, but whatever. We'll roll with it. Maybe it will all come back in the end somehow. Like it makes, how she's connected all these horrible stories. But like the second one, she starts off saying like, I was on a plane once. It was the last time I went on a plane. And then it's not her at all. It's just as if just because she was afraid of flying, she knew of this story that happened. And then the third one, and then the last story, she goes, I was late to the hospital once. And then we cut to the story of, that's a horror story about being late to the hospital. But it's not her character.
No, it's lame.
It's like, what is even happening here? Like, what is the connectivity at all?
Yeah, another way you could play around with this is that, like, maybe every story she tells is an allusion or some sort of reference to something she's devising as she tells the story to get away. So I don't know. In the first story, there's what is there? There's what weapons are in the first story? The gasoline and the match, right? Maybe somehow she's going to actually use that to her advantage in the actual room that she's telling the story. In the second one, there's the hairpin that the guy shoves through the eye of one of the pilots, right? Like maybe she is, while she's telling this story, if she were handcuffed, maybe she has, pulled the hairpin that she has out and is trying to get her handcuffs off, and so on and so forth with each story. Like it's just something to tie these stories together, rather than what we got, which you just mentioned, is like a vague sort of like, this happened to me, but no, it didn't really. I'm just going to tell the story, but I'm going to say it happened to me. It's like, it's really lame.
Well, it doesn't have to be a lot that ties a story together either. You just kind of have to know what's going on. So for example, for this one, there was kind of like a setup feel thing that felt consistent. That was going on with the first three, where it's like, all right, here's just like a regular non-supernatural situation set up. So it just sort of has this feel of this could have happened to anyone kind of thing. And then here's
yeah.
this crazy, thing that happened. And then for whatever reason, for the fourth one, it just completely breaks that, where it's like, rather than this sort of normal setup, we are all of a sudden in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Like, not only does this feel off in the setup for the other ones, but when she's transitioning to that story too, it's like, she doesn't go, oh, do you remember that one time when there was the zombie outbreak in whatever prefecture? It's just like, where are we? What's going on? Like, wouldn't she set up this story differently if we're just all of a sudden in the middle of a zombie outbreak? I don't know. It just felt so weird and off. Like,
yeah. Another idea I have of like a way to maybe tie these things together is kind of sort of like what you said. Let's say you have 4 women who are all held captive. Like, they're all tied and bound in different ways, and they're all in the same room. And he basically is saying, okay, like, each one of you has the opportunity to tell the best horror story, and then at the end, I'll choose who lives and who dies based on all of that. And it'd be so cool if each captive integrates into their story clues for the other captives to escape. However you formulate that. But like, each one of them starts subversively using things in their story to help the other captives, whatever that may be, right? But how cool would it be if you get to the end where it hasn't really worked, right? Like, you say you start with 4 captives and they fail, right? 3 of them fail. But because of what they've told in their stories, the 4th one has gotten enough clues to save herself. So it becomes this kind of like, they died helping the one last person through their stories. Like, that's such a cool way to wrap things around and have it be connected and have it be cathartic in the end, instead of this like, ha ha ha, jump scare, just kidding, I'm going to slash your throat at the end.
It's just, I can't help but laugh because that just seems like the furthest level of thinking from what's on this movie's mind. That's like not even like base level, get something working. It's like, that's what you do when you're really honing in on it stuff and making it work. This movie was nowhere close to that. Like,
right.
Even like, just to go back to these, like, the more basic things like beginning, middle, and end progressions. How about for
Seriously?
for the wraparound? All right, the only real progression we had was how much is he falling asleep? Is the story putting him to sleep? There's no sense of beginning, middle, or end of like an escape that's going on, or her, like, she kind of tries different strategies, but it's not like they necessarily build on one another or anything like that. Again, just no beginning, middle, and end. And like, even just like another example though, in the wraparound of just something where it's like just these little sequences or moments. Maybe, and I should have said this up front, maybe there's just a lot that's lost in, like, literally lost in translation.
That could be
for this. But like, so maybe I just missed something here, for example. But like, we're supposed to have this suspenseful or kind of twisty moment where I guess she almost gets to escape by getting her mom on the phone or something. And it's just like, okay, so she, like, what was that moment, Tim? So she gets the phone call. She picks up, she looks at it, the phone, picks it up. She's talking on it like it's her mom, as far as we know. Maybe it is. And she says, I'm at my friend's, we're doing our homework or whatever. And then we get revealed that it's the killer has the phone on behind him. So then that immediately makes us go, oh, okay, that means he's calling her, I guess, which means that this is one of those moments where he's catching her in the lie, like pretending she's on the phone with her mom. But that doesn't make any sense at all, because she would have seen on the phone who's calling. Like, what? Unless
it's her mom's phone and he's killed her as well. Like, what are we doing?
It's just nothing about it just flowed or made any sense, man. was
In
like,
that
what?
moment, like no joke, in that moment of that thing happening, I threw my hands up and said, I don't even want to know. Like, I don't get it's too. I just was like, no, I'm not even going to try and figure this out.
I'm glad I wasn't alone in that. I was just so beyond just frustrated and confused.
Yeah.
All right. Wasn't just me.
No, it was not. I don't have anything else. I mean, it's messy.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I mean, yeah, same all applies. I'll say, I guess that's the only other little thing that came to mind for the last story, the ambulance on Death Zone. Like you're talking about, maybe kind of like the style for that one. That one, no, the style just felt like it was. I don't know. It just like as if quick cutting was just a style. I don't know. It just felt weird. It felt lame. It felt like it was just working around budgetary constraints of shooting, an action scene on the street. I don't know. It's just something about how that whole sequence was shot was just, I don't know. It just felt bad. And also just kind of on that note too, I hate ragging on these movies. I do hate it, but what else are we doing here? Like we talked about the music, but there are moments where the music, like as if it felt like it just kind of like cuts really quickly and like moves into a different portion, like as if they were cutting the scene and cut the music in the middle of it, but then didn't actually do anything to transition or to smooth out that transition. And you had cuts in the movie that were like on camera cuts. Like here's another example of just like, okay, you gotta like just have a good feel of what film language is to know if something's going to work. Throughout this whole movie, there were moments that were jump cuts, which is fine technique. I like jump cuts, but they were done in such a way where because of like the angles it was on at the time or like the amount of space that we moved during the jump cut, it just felt weird. It like took you a moment to catch up, but like in a bad way.
Yeah.
Like not in a non-intentional way. Anyway,
right.
those
No,
are
I
just
totally.
some just some
remember thinking that too.
Some more just like filmmaking itself, practical things that stood out to me. And now that's it for me.
Okay. Well, let's move on.
Great. Here we go. Last big section. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
I mean, honestly, what is there to even note? I don't know.
Well, Tim, we can move on to Horror Stories 2 and 3. There were two more horror stories.
We will
One
not.
from
I will not.
2013 and Horror Stories 3 from 2016. So cue up that whatever. Let's watch it. Oh yeah, we should say for listeners too, this was harder to find. Maybe we should have said this up front, but we tracked it down on YouTube. Someone uploaded it in okay quality, but otherwise it's kind of weird. Like you think like, yeah, the horror anthology film, it'd be more available, but it's kind of weirdly not available, this one. So might even be harder to track down 2 and 3, I imagine.
Right. We also did not mention just that, like, you know, there are multiple directors, multiple writers on this, as you would assume from an anthology. But there are more directors than there are films and sequences. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's the wraparound and 4 stories. I mean, so
that
at least one of them had a double director.
Yeah, exactly.
And God, what else?
It was the last one. The ambulance one had 2 directors.
Oh, okay, cool.
You know what? That is kind of interesting. I'd say that's a thing of note. Is how, even though it has different directors for everyone, there's a consistency across this whole movie that feels like it was made by the same person, but it's a consistency that's not in the good way. Like, how is it that all these things we're talking about that are bad about it, not working about it, are that consistent when you have different directors. It makes me think it's really on the screenplay, but then it's like you have the same composer through. I don't know. That's kind of interesting to break down. I don't know. I wouldn't know how to break it down, but you think you'd what both worked and what wasn't working was so consistent throughout it for me. It is really weird to think they were all different directors.
Yeah, agreed.
No explanation for that. How could you see that happening?
I don't know.
The producer has that strong of an influence. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Well, it all depends on like how this was all conceived of in the first place, which it seems like it was conceived broadly as one thing, and then they sort of, divvied out who's going to take what story, but they were all under the same kind of umbrella to begin with, rather than sourcing it from existing shorts and then finding a way to sort of tie or wrap around, which does happen as well sometimes with anthologies, probably a lot of the time. So I don't know.
Weird. The last thing that I had, it was just kind of interesting and fun to give some context to one of the opening logos that came up at the beginning of the company that produced this film was Lotte Entertainment, part of Lotte Corporation or Lotte Group, Lotte. Lotte, it's one of the huge corporations in South Korea. Okay. So it's just funny to imagine this is just being released by them for whatever reason for me. Like they're huge. They have like a whole, food. They're like crossed over with Nestle. Like they have grocery stores, they have mini marts, things like that. They have a whole like chemical company division. They have a whole like other tourism division of hotels and baseball a baseball team. They also have, which I've been to in South Korea, they have one of the largest indoor theme parks in existence called Lotte World, which is like a weird Disneyland ripoff. It was really fascinating. Okay. Just a funny thing about Lotte World too. There's like, it's mostly indoor, but then they have like an outdoor leg of it with this roller coaster that I went on. And years after going on it, I was talking to a friend who works in the sort of like audio implementation of attractions and museums and stuff like that, like building in hidden speakers. And he told me he heard like through someone who worked on it, he's like, "Oh my God, are you serious? You went on that roller coaster? I would not have gone on that roller coaster." Apparently it has like a history of injuries or breakdowns or something like that. And some more corruption on Lotte World, just because I thought it was funny. On June 2016, companies of the group were raided by South Korean prosecutors investigating into a possible slush fund as well as breach of trust involving transactions among the group's companies. Just, I don't know. There's something kind of weird or ironic where you had this company that was at the heart of some corruption, and in one of the stories, you have a story element that's about like super large corrupt company that's involved in some kind of scandal. I don't know, man. This felt very like corrupt snake eating its tail. Like what? You just wonder if like this something about this movie being bad is connected to the prong, the soil from which it was grown.
Yeah,
in a way.
Interesting. Yeah,
I don't know. That's why I mentioned it all. It just kind of gave me a trip to like have been to Lotte World to know a bit about them and see at the beginning Lotte Entertainment. So some context about something that's we would not know here. It's a big ol' thing there. Okay, great.
Okay, great.
So now we can wind down from horror stories with some RecommenDEADtions for us and you, as we like to do.
I watched a horror film that's on Shudder that I really liked and was pleasantly surprised by. It's called Son, S-O-N, and it's just kind of like a tiny little indie horror. Nothing crazy, but like really fun vibes and like really well shot. Like a lot of really nice lighting composition in particular. It's got the actress from Halloween, the granddaughter of Laurie Strode. That actress who now, of course, I can't remember her name.
Andy Matichak.
Yes, that's it. It was fun. It didn't get great reviews, and I think a lot of it is because people are like, well, I don't like the ending. Well, tough. I mean, sometimes the ending isn't, what it's all about. But I really liked it. It was fun. Check it out.
Cool.
Gore. Some really cool gore.
I just added it to my watch list.
Some body horror, which I always love.
Well, in this section, not only do we like to recommend Dead, but I like to follow up if I watched one of your recommendations, Tim.
Ooh, okay.
So I finally rented and checked out Wait Until Dark, the Audrey Hepburn movie you just recommended recently.
This is true.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great too. And I especially just wanted to point out Alan Arkin was incredible. He's so good in this.
The greatest.
Right? I could not believe him in this movie. And then I didn't even realize it was him until afterwards, seeing him at a younger age.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy.
That and the whole last sequence of, that cat and mouse stuff of playing with the darkness and all the lights and all that. And flames. That was cool. Anyway, not my recommendation, but just like to follow up when we've watched something we've recommended. I don't know. Recently, let's see. I'll recommend something let's say I enjoyed it just as much as I hoped I would. It was something I had seen before, but we're kind of at that era now where like early aughts movies, it's kind of taken me by surprise. They're 20 years old now, and most, a lot of them I hadn't seen since then. So I revisited for the first time since 2003, School of Rock with Jack Black.
I just watched that too.
Maybe just because, it's Richard Linklater. I always want to watch it. I love Jack Black. And, of course, Mike White writing it. I loved The White Lotus. That was great. And that was his TV show. Could have recommended that. But anyway, School of Rock, I thought, all those reasons. But it's interesting to point out as a good example of something where it's like this kind of structure and story where it can be totally fun and engaging and you get caught up with the characters, but it doesn't have to just do what it feels like obligatory stakes or drama. Like it kind of gets to it, it's like, all the parents find out about it and are, trying to stop the concert at the end. But I don't know, for the most part, like the movie, a lot of times it's just kind of like you're hanging out with them and they're playing their instruments and this it's more low stakes. Like we have just enough just to kind of, what's the next goal we got to reach here? But it didn't feel like it was this sort of, the Disney Channel formula of, all right, this is the part of the movie where this thing goes wrong. And then, they're trying to do this and then that goes wrong. That was just really refreshing and is cool. And maybe that's one of Richard Linklater's strengths too.
It is a testament to the single goal, character type. So Jack Black has one goal: to play at the Battle of the Bands. That's it. Everything that he does is based on that one goal. And it just so happens that in his pursuit of that one goal, he learns a lesson.
Yeah.
That's it. He's got a couple obstacles here and there, but it's all just about achieving this one goal, and his internal conflict or struggle which is sort of who am I as a person, comes around and meets his external goal, which is I want to play in Battle of the Bands, and they meet each other there, and that's that. It's so simple, but so really effective.
When you have those strong tenets, whatever you call it, tenets. Maybe that is you don't have to worry about shoving in all of them, because you just have this so clear. This is the character journey. This is the character goal. That's enough to go off of. It's fun. And it was classic. You have it's the slacker or someone we perceive as the slacker, who's actually not one. We get to see him. He's once plugged into his goal. He's anything but a slacker. He's an awesome teacher as long as he's getting to do it his way.
Yeah. No, it's so simple and just concisely good.
Yeah, and just watching Jack Black do his thing and just figure everything
fun.
out by the seat of his pants. He's one of those archetypes. So much fun. And
Yeah.
Richard Linklater, power to him. It's like, yeah, when you have Jack Black and he's doing this, performing whatever song, yeah, you just want to see him in a long take doing it. Like it doesn't, it's good. He knows how to shoot them.
Definitely.
Great. Well, Tim, because it is the end of September here, we actually are not pulling from our hat. It's already time of year, believe it or not, where we are going to do our planned October special. So for our first October special 2 years ago now in Dismembering Horror History, we did the 4 Psycho films, or the Anthony Perkins Psycho films. For our a year ago, last October, we did the 4 Scream films because we thought it'd be fun to go through them before a Scream 5 exists. Just kind of, all right, here's our 4 Scream movie reality preserved in that perspective.
Right.
And now it's thought of a new kind of fun theme that would be interesting to explore would be to do the threequels of the famous horror franchises. So the famous horror franchises being Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween. And each one of these films, they kind of have each of the third ones for each of these franchises, they have some kind of notoriety, or sometimes they're people's favorite. We've also thought it'd be fun just to actually talk about these big tentpole characters and worlds, franchises, whatever you want to call them. But it'll be fun because for one of these, Halloween, we are about to enter a reality where we have 2 third movies in the franchise officially. Because as it now is in vogue to do, they're doing it with The Exorcist, where they just forget all the sequels to the original. They're doing direct sequels to the very first Halloween. So we already reviewed for this podcast the new Halloween film that came out a couple of years ago. So that was technically the sequel to the original Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween, totally forgetting
Correct.
Halloween 2 and anything after that. So technically Halloween Kills, that's coming out this month as of when you're listening to this, is also a third Halloween movie in addition to Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Correct.
So we'll get a new...
And just to make it even
Yeah.
more confusing, they're doing a trilogy with the new version of this Halloween franchise. So the 4th movie in the canon will technically be the 3rd movie of the trilogy, the modern trilogy. But this is the 2nd movie in the modern trilogy, but the 3rd movie in the canon. Oh boy. What am I talking about?
And when you say canon, you mean the second canon.
That's right. That's right. The 2nd canon. If it wasn't confusing enough. Jesus.
But no, that'll be fun. I mean, I love the 3rd Nightmare on Elm Street. I feel like that'll be great to talk about. Friday the 13th is when he gets the hockey mask for the first time. I get why it's a lot of people's favorites. It's kind of doing the formula hard. The characters are fun in it. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, it's the odd man out in that it's not a Michael Myers movie, but it has taken on a sort of new fandom with Tom Atkins starring in it. He's always great and has his fans, but it's a super Halloween. I mean, it's set on Halloween like the other Halloween movies, so it's got that fun flavor to it. And then we'll see what the new Halloween's all about too, because of course we're going to see that. It's a fun excuse to talk about it.
Absolutely. I'm going to go on a haunted hayride. It's going to be great.
Great. All right. So then with that, our big ask is if you made it this far, we assume you liked being here this long. So maybe you should tell a like-minded friend about our fair show if you think they may enjoy joining us. Great.
Yeah.
All right.
Do it.
So, well, in closing, whether this is just a jump scare dream or not, thanks for listening.
That's right. That's right. And we will see you next time.
Goodbye.